My father stole my identity and took out 3 credit cards in my name. He never paid them off and now I can't buy a house. I called the cops. I found my dad used my information to open 3 credit cards over the last year. When I went to get a pre-approval for a mortgage, I was told by the lender they wouldn't be able to give me a home loan because of the defaulted credit cards. They also said I probably wouldn't be able to get a loan from any lender because of it and gave me a sheet of paper explaining what I'd need to do in order to fix it. When I tried disputing the cards, one of which is already in collections, the disputes got closed out as the debts were verified. I told my divorced parents about it, and their answers were pretty wildly different. My dad said that these things happen and that I should be more careful in the future with my social security number. Seeing as I've always been careful, that made me pretty mad. My mom said she thinks my dad might have something to do with it since him opening credit cards in her name had a part to play in their divorce. She told me he ran up about $50,000 in credit card debt on secret credit cards. A few days ago, I ended up casually telling my dad I'm going to have to file a police report for the credit cards. He told me I probably shouldn't do that because $15,000 isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. When I told him it was keeping me from buying a house, he said I could just wait a few years until they fell off of my credit report. He said it would only take another 4.5 years. When I told him I obviously couldn't wait that long, so I have to file the police report, he straight up told me not to do it and to just be more careful in the future. Once I told him I already got the paperwork together from the credit agencies, he told me he had opened the cards to pay for living expenses over the last year. He said his work slowed down a little bit, but he'd do what he could to help pay it off. He said it would ruin his life if he went to jail. I'm leaning towards going to the police anyway, but I didn't write that minute. I have everything in front of me today to go make the report. I guess I just want to make sure turning it over to the police is the right thing to do here, especially if I'm wanting to buy a house this year. Update 1. I spent about half of the day reading everyone's comments, and it pretty much solidified what I was going to do. The process itself was pretty easy. I went to the police department, and the person at the front desk had me wait about 10 minutes before an officer came out. We talked for about 15 minutes, and he made copies of all of the paperwork I gave him. He told me the case would be assigned to a detective on Tuesday and gave me a pamphlet they have about how to contact the credit agencies. I was given a report number and was told I could use that now to start disputing the accounts. A detective is going to follow up with me in the next couple of weeks. I asked what would end up happening to my dad, and the officer said it looked pretty clear-cut to him, but the charging decision is 100% with the state attorney's office. He said if they decide to pursue charges, he'll likely get a warrant put out for his arrest. He also said typically if this is his first felony, he's probably going to get some sort of pre-trial diversion with court supervision or probation. He probably won't go to jail for years, but if he gets picked up on a warrant, he's going to spend at least a little bit of time behind bars. I've decided I'm okay with that because it's obvious to me he did this purposefully. He's never been arrested before, so hopefully this is a wake-up call for him. At the same time, he completely did this to himself. I'll update whenever I learn more. Update 2. There's been some good, a little bad, and a little real bad progress the past few days. The good. I used my report number and disputed every account. When I checked my credit last, which everyone should be doing regularly, the one with the lowest balance was already off of my account. The other cards and the collection account are still showing, but I have hope they'll be falling off in the next few weeks. I also received a call from someone at the prosecutor's office who had a couple of extra questions for me and asked if I would be willing to testify if they charged him. I said yes, and they said they would be making a decision on their charges before the end of the month. The bad. Obviously, someone talked to my dad about this because the last time he talked, he scolded me for going to the police and hasn't talked to me since. One of my brothers was also pretty mad at me about it and hasn't talked to me in over a week. The rest of my siblings and my mom understood where I was coming from. The real bad. One of my other brothers, not the one who was pissed, found 2 open credit cards on his credit which weren't his. He checked his credit score for the first time in a couple of years, and he said it was down about 150 points from where it used to be. He's now in the process of dealing with that. He doesn't have any positive proof yet that it was our dad, but the fingers are pointing in that direction. This still blows my mind that a dad could do this to his own children. I'm moving forward though. I still hope to be able to purchase a house before the end of the year. Update 3. I'm happy to say my credit has completely returned to normal. All of the disputed accounts are now gone. Obviously, I'm excited about this since it gives me a solid financial future. I also received a letter from the prosecutor's office 2 weeks ago, and they said they are going forward with a charge of what is basically identity theft. I spoke with an assistant prosecutor and they explained they'd be putting out a warrant shortly, but that as a first-time offender, they'd probably offer a misdemeanor charge and a plea. My dad was arrested last Friday after a traffic stop. He got out of jail the next day and has a new court date in late August, according to the public records website. He called me and told me I'm dead to him and to never contact him again. My brother, who found credit cards opened in his name, has made a police report as well, but apparently the addresses are different on the accounts. He was told it was unlikely it would be prosecuted, but he's working on getting them off of his credit. Update 4. So, the past couple of weeks have been a roller coaster. It's incredible how much can happen in such a short span. Let's get into it. The fallout with my dad continued to snowball. He's taken to posting vague, angry messages on Facebook. Things like, "You think you know someone, but blood is just a word," and "betrayal cuts deeper than any knife." My brother, who found the fake cards in his name, tried to talk to him, but Dad just deflected, insisting someone must have stolen his information too. Yeah, right. The rest of the family is split down the middle. Some understand why I did what I did, but others think I've ruined our dad's life over a little mistake. The guilt trips are intense, especially for my grandma. She keeps calling, leaving messages about how Dad's health isn't great and this stress could be the end of him. It's brutal, but I know I did the right thing. Then came the court date. I wasn't expecting to see my dad, but I did. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. The judge read the charges and set another date for a plea hearing. Dad's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, hoping to avoid a felony record. I get it, but it still stings to see him so defeated. The good news is that with my credit fixed, I'm back on track to buy a house. I've been working with a lender who's been incredibly understanding about the whole situation. Fingers crossed, I should be closing on a cute little place in a nice neighborhood by next month. But, as always, there's more drama. My brother, who was initially mad at me, has now gone through his credit reports with a fine-tooth comb. Surprise, surprise, he found more suspicious accounts. This time, they were payday loans taken out in his name. He's furious and finally admitted that maybe, just maybe, our dad has a serious problem. We're working together to get those sorted out, but it's a mess. Then, out of nowhere, my mom dropped a bombshell. Apparently, she had a private investigator look into Dad's finances after their divorce. She didn't want to tell us before, but she's got proof of a pattern of financial abuse that goes back decades. Fake loans, secret credit cards, even a second mortgage on their old house. It's shocking, but it also makes everything make sense. Armed with this new information, my brother and I went back to the police. The detective handling my case was surprised, but said it could help build a stronger case against Dad. It's bittersweet. On one hand, I feel validated. On the other, it's devastating to realize just how deep this goes. And as if that wasn't enough, we discovered Dad had opened more accounts in my younger sister's name. She's in college and had no idea. Her credit is wrecked, and she's struggling to get student loans now. She's heartbroken, and honestly, it's the final straw for a lot of us. Update 5. We had a family meeting without Dad. It was intense, to say the least. Everyone is hurt, angry, and confused. My mom laid out all the evidence she had, and we all agreed to take it to the police together. This isn't just about my credit anymore. It's about stopping a pattern of abuse that's hurt all of us. The police were a bit overwhelmed with the sheer volume of new information, but they promised to investigate thoroughly. It feels like we're finally getting somewhere, but the emotional toll is heavy. My siblings and I are in therapy, trying to process everything. It's going to be a long road to healing. The next court date for Dad is coming up, and it looks like they're going to push for a plea deal. His lawyer is trying to get him into some kind of financial rehabilitation program instead of jail time. Honestly, I'm conflicted. I don't want to see my dad in jail, but I also want him to face consequences for what he's done. It's a tough spot to be in. In the meantime, I'm focusing on the positives. My house is almost ready, and I'm planning a big housewarming party once I move in. It's a small but significant step towards reclaiming my life from the chaos my dad caused. My siblings and I are closer than ever, united in our determination to move forward and support each other. But then, just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I got a call from an unknown number. It was someone claiming to be an old friend of my dad's, with information that could change everything. They said they needed to meet in person and wouldn't talk over the phone. I'm skeptical, but also curious. What could they possibly know that we don't already? So here I am, about to meet this mystery person. I have no idea what to expect, but I'll keep you all updated. This story is far from over, and honestly, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Update 6. Meeting the mystery person was a whirlwind. We met at a coffee shop, and it turns out he was a former business partner of my dad's from years ago. He laid out a story that was both shocking and, unfortunately, not entirely surprising given what we already knew. Apparently, my dad had been involved in some shady financial dealings for decades. This guy told me my dad had a history of manipulating people, using their personal information to secure loans and credit without their knowledge. He even hinted that dad had connections with some less than reputable characters who might come knocking if things went south. The most shocking revelation was that my dad had once tried to pin a massive debt on this guy, nearly ruining his life. He managed to clear his name, but it was a close call. Hearing this, I realized just how deep and dark my dad's actions went. Armed with this new information, I went back to the detective. He was floored by the new developments and assured me they would investigate further. It's like peeling back layers of an onion, each one more pungent and tear-inducing than the last. The family is reeling from this new information. My brother, who was initially mad at me, apologized, realizing now just how deep Dad's deception ran. We're all struggling to come to terms with the fact that the man we thought we knew is a complete stranger to us. Therapy is helping, but it's a slow and painful process. As for Dad, he's been radio silent since the last court appearance. His lawyer reached out to me, asking if I'd consider dropping the charges in exchange for Dad entering a rehab program and making financial restitution. I told him I'd think about it, but honestly, I'm leaning towards letting the legal process play out. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. In the meantime, life goes on. I closed on my house. It's a small victory, but a sweet one. Moving in was chaotic, but my siblings rallied around me. We had a small, intimate housewarming party. It wasn't the big celebration I had envisioned, but it was meaningful. We're all trying to build new, healthier lives despite the shadow our dad has cast over us. But the story doesn't end here. Just last night, I received a cryptic message on Facebook from a stranger claiming they have even more dirt on my dad. They won't reveal who they are or what they know until we meet in person. It feels like a never-ending nightmare, but I have to see this through. So, here we go again. I'm meeting this new mystery person tomorrow. I have no idea what to expect, but one thing's for sure. This journey is far from over. I'll update you all soon. Update 7. Meeting the second mystery person was like stepping into a spy thriller. We met at a quiet park, and it turned out to be a woman in her late 40s. She introduced herself as Carla and claimed she was an old friend of my mom's. She had a folder full of documents that blew my mind. Carla explained that she and my mom had been close during the early years of my parents' marriage. She said she had always suspected something was off with my dad, but didn't have proof until years later. She handed me the folder, which contained copies of old bank statements, emails, and letters showing my dad's shady financial activities. He had been running scams on multiple people for years, using fake identities and stolen information. The most shocking part was a letter from my mom to Carla, written right before their divorce. In it, my mom detailed how she had discovered my dad's fraudulent activities and had been gathering evidence to protect herself and her children. She mentioned being afraid for our safety if my dad found out. It was chilling to read, but it also made me incredibly proud of my mom for trying to protect us. I took the documents to the detective, who was floored by the new evidence. He assured me they would dig deeper into my dad's past. It feels like we're finally getting somewhere, but the emotional toll is immense. The family is more united than ever, but we're all struggling with the weight of these revelations. Therapy sessions have become a regular part of our lives, and we're trying to support each other as best we can. My mom has been a rock, helping us navigate this storm and reminding us that we'll get through it together. My dad's court date is fast approaching, and his lawyer has been pushing harder for a plea deal. They're offering to pay restitution and enter a rehab program in exchange for a reduced sentence. I'm torn. Part of me wants to see my dad face the full consequences of his actions, but another part of me just wants this nightmare to end. In the midst of all this chaos, I'm trying to focus on my new house. It's been a sanctuary for me, a place where I can start fresh and build a new life. My siblings and I have spent countless hours fixing it up, and it's slowly starting to feel like home. But just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I received another message. This time, it was from someone claiming to be my dad's old business partner. They have even more information about his shady dealings and want to meet. I'm hesitant, but I know I need to see this through to the end. Update 8. Meeting the old business partner turned out to be another eye-opener. His name was Rick, and he seemed genuinely concerned for my family and me. We met at a diner on the edge of town, a place straight out of a 70s movie with vinyl booths and neon signs. Rick was in his early 60s, with a weathered face that suggested he had seen more than his fair share of hard times. Rick didn't waste any time getting to the point. He laid out a detailed history of his partnership with my dad. According to Rick, they had started a small business together years ago. It was initially successful, but things took a turn when my dad began diverting funds into personal accounts and taking out loans without Rick's knowledge. When Rick confronted him, my dad vanished, leaving him to deal with the financial fallout. Rick nearly lost everything. He handed me a folder filled with documents that painted a clear picture of my dad's manipulations. There were forged signatures, falsified bank statements, and even letters from creditors. It was overwhelming, but it also solidified the fact that my dad had been living a double life for decades. Taking this new information to the detective felt like déjà vu. He was astonished at the depth of my dad's deceit and assured me that this would significantly impact the case. The investigation was now expanding beyond just our family's situation. It seemed my dad's actions had harmed many people over the years. The legal process continued to unfold, and the plea deal discussions became more intense. My dad's lawyer reached out again, pushing for a deal that would involve a significant restitution payment and mandatory financial rehabilitation. They were trying to avoid a felony conviction, which would have far-reaching consequences for my dad's future. The prosecutor seemed open to negotiations, but nothing was set in stone. The family dynamics were still complicated. My siblings and I had many heated discussions about what to do next. Some of us wanted to see our dad pay fully for his crimes, while others felt a plea deal and restitution would suffice. The tension was palpable, but we knew we had to stay united to get through this. One night, as I was organizing the mountain of paperwork related to the case, my phone rang. It was my dad. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and his voice was shaky, almost desperate. He apologized, saying he never meant to hurt us and that he was just trying to stay afloat. He begged me to support the plea deal, promising to make things right. It was hard to listen to him, knowing the damage he had caused, but I also heard a glimmer of genuine remorse. I took a few days to think about it and finally agreed to support the plea deal. I just wanted to move forward and start rebuilding our lives. The plea deal was accepted in court. My dad was sentenced to financial rehabilitation, court supervision, and a significant restitution payment to my siblings and me. It wasn't the justice some of us had hoped for, but it was a step towards closure. With the legal proceedings winding down, my focus shifted back to my new house. It became a sanctuary for me and a place where my siblings and I could gather and heal. We spent weekends working on the house, turning it into a true home. It was therapeutic, and slowly but surely, we began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. But, as is often the case, life had one more twist in store. While cleaning out the attic of the new house, I found an old, dusty box tucked away in a corner. It was filled with letters and photographs from the early years of my parents' marriage. Among the items, there was a letter from my dad to my mom, dated shortly before their divorce. In it, he confessed to his financial misdeeds and begged for her forgiveness, promising to change. It was heartbreaking to read, but it also provided some much-needed closure.